Good morning.
Buongiorno, benvenuti. It's okay?
Good morning. Is that on? I can't tell whether that's on. Can everybody hear me? Wave your hand if you can't hear me. Good morning and welcome to panel 3 of the School of Data Journalism. If this is the first panel that you've joined, this is the second time that we've run the School of Data Journalism. We were here last year as well, and we're very grateful to the festival organisers to have invited us back to do the second version. A small kind of celebratory announcement for today in particular. A year ago at this very event, I think on this day as well, the European Journalism Centre and the Open Knowledge Foundation launched the Data Journalism Handbook, and so today is its birthday. Liliana and I have discount codes for it as well. If anybody would like one, come and speak to Liliana and I after the session, or it's also available for free online. So if you're happy to read the internet version, then you can get it for free online. There are a couple of logistical things that we need to mention to you before we start. There's a hashtag for the entire School of Data Journalism, which is #DDJ. #DDJ School. So if you're tweeting, if you can get on the internet at all, that's the one to tweet with. A couple of words also about the kind of organisers. Obviously, the festival has given us this slot, but the school in itself is organised by two organisations. One, the Open Knowledge Foundation, and the second, the European Journalism Centre. Somewhat, I think, confusingly for participants, I work on a project called the School of Data, not the School of Data Journalism, and Liliana runs datadrivenjournalism.net. So if you kind of merge them together, we work together on this project. Hopefully, every year they'll invite us back to run the School of Data Journalism. So both of our organisations work to do training for journalists. We as the Open Knowledge Foundation School of Data also train NGOs how to work with data, and running training all over the world. So I'm just going to hand over to Liliana to say a couple of words about the European Journalism Centre and about the next session, which is coming up.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I'm Liliana Bonegru. I lead data journalism activities at the European Journalism Centre. For those of you who weren't here for the previous sessions, we run a website called datadrivenjournalism.net, where people can find out about this topic and get training resources, tutorials, case studies, interviews, and many others. We also published a manual last year, the Data Journalism Handbook, and regularly organize training events. And this panel is actually organized also in collaboration with the AHER Foundation and iData, thanks to Elisabetta Tola and Guido Romeo. Guido is going to be our moderator for the session, and they are going to discuss data journalism in Southern European countries. So I'll hand over to Guido to get started.
Thank you, Liliana. Thank you, Lucy. It's very pleasant and very nice to be here. Thank you for the invitation for the second year, and also for making these panels of the data school a half an hour later in the morning, which is always very helpful. Okay, we're talking about data journalism in Southern Europe, but all of this will be in English. So just to be clear. I'll go straight away to introduce our panelists here. To the far right, Mar Cabra. Mar Cabra is a freelance data journalist, but she's also been heading the Civile Foundation in Spain, in Madrid. She has a very strong curriculum in data journalism going back to the CIJ school and the Columbia University, and then President She's is also involved with the ICIG, the consortium, which has been, I'm sure many of you have heard of or know very well. It's been reporting very good stories at international level, so we're here about that. To my left, Marco Raccar. Marco is, I love, he was explaining to me the concept behind his the name of his association, Windmill. Windmill, of course, is might sound very technical, but in fact it goes back to Don Quixote, and so Marco was explaining how there's a call to charge windmills, and he'll explain us how he does this in Croatia. Marco is not a journalist, but does things of very high journalistic interest, and I think we can learn a lot from what he's doing. Elisabetta and myself, you've seen us in other panels already this week, but we share a common project, the iData project, which was probably the first non-profit project on data journalism in Italy. We collaborate very often. I'm in the Wired newsroom. Elisabetta has her own entity with Formica Blu, and we do data stories together. We'll be launching datajournalist.it just to, get some attention away from datajournalist.net. We try to copy that one. And she'll be explaining more about that enterprise later on. So I propose we start with a introduction round and to learn a little bit more about what our panelists are doing, and then we'll get to the core of the business here, the Southern European issue and data. Mar, do you want to start?
Here. Yeah. Just with the presentation, right?
Yeah.
Not with how good Spain is.
Okay, so it's like it's a soccer match here. Okay.
No, well, thank you very much for bringing me. I'm very happy that we're having this panel because I really felt very frustrated when I went back to Spain in 2011. I was trying to do what I had learned in the US. I went to Columbia Journalism School in 2009 to learn investigative journalism. I wanted to, discover the new Watergate in Spain. And instead, I actually discovered something more powerful, which is the power to ask and also the power to tell stories that happen in a systematic way. And that's what I like about data. I was an immigrant in the United States, and I was told by sources that children under state care, what it's called foster care, were being given a lot of psychotropic medications for mental illnesses, medications designed for bipolar disorder or ADHD or hyperactive syndrome, or for also for schizophrenia. And those were being given to children under state care in a great amount. And I thought, okay, I'm going to find a kid that has this problem. And I found a kid that actually had 11 years old and had lived in more than half a dozen homes over his life, and had taken almost 30 different psychotropic medications in his life, and he was 11. And that was good, and I was doing a documentary, and that looked good on TV. But what was more powerful is that I could send an email to the state of Texas, to the Department of Health, and in 15 days I got data that showed that what happened to this kid was happening to a lot of children, almost a fourth of the children under state care. And that what I got, I didn't have to say who I was. I didn't have to pretty much fight with them. I got a spreadsheet, with every single county in Texas, broken down by age and broken down by sex. I got data, detailed data on how many kids like him were taking these drugs. And the story that I could tell was so powerful, or so much more powerful than just the story of this kid, that when I went back to Spain, I thought, wow, I want to do that, right? And now we're going to talk about how it's not as easy as sending an email. I think we should actually call this panel "How to Live in a PDF World," instead of doing data journalism in Europe, which is basically the summary. But now, what I basically do is I worked for a while last year in 2012 with a foundation called Thibio. We basically tried to combine programmers, the work of programmers and journalists to work together and produced data stories that would make the life better, or data stories that would produce a journalistic work. And I'll show you some examples later. And some of the other things I do is, right now I'm part, as Guido said, of the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, which is the motto of the ICIJ is the world's best cross-border investigative team, with basically 160 reporters in more than 60 countries that work together doing cross-border work. And in this last project, Offshore Leaks, data was very important. We got access to 2.5 million files on offshore, on tax havens, and basically we put faces to people that have companies and trusts in tax havens worldwide. So that's what I do.
Thank you, Maya. So we should, well, let's have rules of engagement here and points for who has the worst data sets and who has the best data sets. No, you actually touched on one of the points, one of the crucial points of this panel, and that's data and availability, access to data. And I think we'll hear about from Marco as well later on, but I think it's very heterogeneous across Europe and within the countries themselves. I think I should leave this to you because you touched on this yourself.
I touched the PDF, yes. Many, many PDF.
Too many PDFs.
Too many PDFs, exactly. So good morning, everybody. Yeah, as Guido was saying, I come from science journalism. I've been working as a science journalist for the last 10, 12 years with some of the colleagues that are here in Formica Blu. That's an agency we founded years ago in Bologna and Rome. And we started being interested in data, actually coming over here about two years ago, and also taking part in some other project. Guido started saying, well, we should really do something like that in Italy, because, yeah, we live in a PDF world, and that's when we are actually lucky, because most of the time we don't even get that. So we start kind of looking into possibility of doing things, and then last year we were here complaining how difficult it is to do all of that. And then most of the colleagues that were here showing all this beautiful American example of data journalism start saying, well, stop complaining, start doing something. Maybe start small, start simple, but just start. So that's what we started doing, trying, and we touched many difficulties. We will see some example later. Doing investigation, kind of asking data in Italy is very difficult, because on the side of the, especially institutional side, is like they just don't have the culture of open data. But things have been changing a lot in the last year, and I am really grateful to the civil society, the communities that have been growing in these last 2 years. I want to mention two of them, Spaghetti Open Data and Axe and Hackers. Axe and Hackers, actually, we funded a group here in Perugia last year, and from then on, both in Bologna and Milano, we've been doing some meetings, which means putting together developers and journalists and people interested in information. And that's one way that we are kind of exploring, trying to get our work done, because we perfectly know that as journalists only, it's impossible to get a complete piece of data journalism to the end. And then the Spaghetti Open Data, which is a huge community of people, extremely active. Part of this community is actually composed by civil servants that are working within the public administration. And these are the people who actually pushed to have and to produce open data portals in regions, in cities, and at the national level. And I really want to mention, if I can, one of the best, can I just access this? It's just one example. Where is it? It's actually in Firefox. Yeah, thank you. This is a good example, if we can get the slide. Yeah. I don't know if it's coming.
There you go.
There. Okay, Open Coesione is one of the best websites that's been produced recently. It's actually been done by a group of people working in the Ministry of Development, and it's very interesting because what it's here, it's really open data, reusable data completely, about the funding that are going through small project, big project, infrastructure, school, everything. So it's a way of tracking how the money is spent in Italy, and you can download the data, use the data. There is a lot of data already used in the website, but they are also doing workshops to actually train people to use the website. So that's a very good example of how, when you have a group of people strongly motivated within the public administration, you actually get something like that. And we are kind of trying to connect with the journalistic community in order to use this data. And of course, even to go and criticize the way the money is used, that's obvious. So that's to say that things are moving. We're not still at the same level than we were last year. We're actually going quite fast. And as Guido said before, we're actually going to show you that we have been doing some investigation, and we're actually going to launch a website fully dedicated to data journalism in Italy. Thank you.
Thank you, Elisabetta. Yes, the Open Coesione is something I always mention as well when I get to talk about data journalism in Italy, and it's, I mean, it's definitely one of the best, probably the best resource that we've seen coming in over the last 12 months. I should say, however, there's one disappointing sign, and that comes from our community, because I personally helped in organizing the first workshop, and the presentation of the site and of the data got a good press coverage, but the guys in the ministry who are really extremely motivated were a bit disappointed, because everybody wrote about the website and about the press release, but nobody actually went and downloaded data sets. So I think there we need to push it a bit forward. I mean, start downloading stuff and using it. I mean, it's because, and it's not PDF. Yeah. I mean, it's really searchable, machine-readable data. It's nice. So it's been done the way it's supposed to be done. So, end of the advertising for the ministry there. Marco, on to you. Tell us a bit more, because the funny thing about Marco is, and the great thing is, that every time you ask him, how do you do this? He has an association to do that. So it's like this serial association guy.
Okay, so I started as a, for a reason which are simply too long to explain today. I started in 2006 working as a political consultant. I had a strange idea that I want to replace the government in my country, and I decided to start consulting politicians, and the idea was for them to learn how to replace the corrupt government we had. So the plan is going very well now. And after some time, I was really unhappy with the progress, and I said, okay, we have to do something about it. And the first project, which I hit in 2009, and it ended up being a, let's say, gold mine, more or less, because it was unbelievably successful, was a website which dealt with the voters list in Croatia. So we had an issue that we had to we had more voters in Croatia than actual citizens, which is illogical, but it happens. And everybody understood that in Croatia, but of course it creates a lot of issues, especially during elections, obviously. So I wrote a blog post. I also own one of the most popular, most influential, however you want to call it, blogs in Croatia, and I wrote, I think I figured a way to calculate where the voter fraud is happening in Croatia if I could get a copy of voters lists for the country. And 6 weeks afterwards, I received a CD with voters files on it. I still don't know who sent it to me, but we created a website, and as a result, Croatia was forced to change the constitution in 2010 changed the laws which regulate place of residence in 2012, and we had Euro Parliament elections last Sunday in Croatia. Croatia is joining EU on July 1st, so we had elections before any of you had, and they actually managed to delete 18% of all voters for the list. So there are at least 750,000 angry people in Croatia when you mentioned my name. So it started with voters list, and then in 2010 I was arrested and held for questioning for 10 days for supposedly publishing a list of war veterans, because we have a little bit more veterans than we used to have in the past, like 200,000 of them, more than we had during the war. And because it was a database and it's politics and it's internet, so it was quite obvious bet for police to arrest me. And during these 10 days in police, I had plenty of time to think about what I'm going to do next with my life. And I decided that I'll find a NGO. So this is not my first NGO, that's true. So the NGO is called Windmill. And the idea behind Windmill is to, what we are trying to do, we are trying to identify the most painful data set the government can have, and then we take it and publish it in an interesting and reusable way. So that's the beginning of Windmill. In 2011 we have published, for example, 150,000 contracts for public procurement in Croatia. We did unbelievable stuff with public procurement. Last year we published, for example, I just mentioned, we published a list of all flights of Croatian government's plane in the last almost 15 years, and we found some really interesting places where that plane went to, especially because, for example, the government prosecutor didn't have this information, and he asked us, where do we get it, because the office of the government actually falsified the flight plans. So it was fun. And currently we are working on another project which will make every businessman in Croatia angry, because we want to create a visual map of connections between candidates, lawyers, public notaries, party officials, party donors, business owners, NGO people. So we want to put them all in a map and calculate how strong their relationships actually are. And the government is not cooperating at the moment, so that's what
I just wonder why. Okay, yeah, you're right. I mean, making a certain kind of people angry is great fun. I totally agree with you. But I would like to pick up exactly from this point, and for our second round of talks. Where do you get the data? I mean, that's something that last year was coming. We were getting that question a lot. On some bits, we struggle a lot in Italy. Elisabetta will talk about one of our projects, Scuole Sicure, which was like really the don't do it at home thing.
PDF marathon.
A PDF nightmare, I would say, not a marathon, but How does it work for you? People just send you CDs in the mail all the time and you get all this data? I mean, what is the trick?
Well, I make a wish. No, my lawyer tells me that whenever someone asks me where do I get my data, I have to say it's completely legal, although maybe ethically questionable. So, no, I mean, it's quite easy. For the voters list, I really got an anonymous CD, so I really don't know who sent it to me.
So there was a leak, basically.
There was a leak. So I wrote a blog post. My blog is well read in Croatia, and someone actually sent me a CD with a list. I'm not supposed to have that list because it's illegal for a person to have it. It should only be kept in government's offices, but I had it. As far as the war veteran goes, since there is a 10 years in prison for that website, I'm not going to talk about it. So, but as soon as statute of limitation passes, I'm going to write about that one. For the government's plane, for example, that was really fun. I got an idea from people from Tunisia because I was watching what they were doing in Tunisia, and they did a similar thing. And the interesting thing is that, you know, there are people who collect stamps, people who collect postcards, people who collect different stuff, and there are people who are staying on airports and taking pictures of planes. And there is, of course, a social network for those people, and they share their photos, dates, pictures of planes, and so on. So we basically identified a couple of those websites, and we took a license plate of government's plane and simply went through the data set and downloaded, scraped all the information about that plane. The interesting thing was that we found some flights which were not listed in official flight manifest of that plane. For example, we figured out that former Croatian Prime Minister, who is now on trial for corruption and so on, when he went to the US, he would fly business class to the US, but he would also fly government's plane to the US as well, and then he will, you know, disembark at Washington or New York, board the Croatian's government plane, and do all US flights with a private plane, and then come back, board business class, and come back home, which is, you know, for an aircraft which costs like $6,000 an hour to fly, you know, that's simply a waste of money. We did some other things, for example, which helped improve data transparency in Croatia. We did one website called State Budget, which is basically a website which tries to visualize the state budget to everyone, because in my opinion, after the constitution, the state budget is the second most important document.
Should we show that? Is that
no, I have that's the other site I have prepared. The state budget is second most important document in a country, simply because it explains where the government gets the money and how it spends the money. But the problem with the state budget is that it often talks about billions of Croatian kuna, euros, or whatever currency you are using, a normal person simply cannot relate to that kind of figures. So it really doesn't matter if healthcare costs 15 billion or 25 billion, because it's so abstract figure that you cannot have a relationship with that numbers. So you cannot form an educated opinion on that one. So we created a visualization of state budget, which is if the whole screen is a size of the state budget, then the size of individual rectangles on the screen represents the relative size of particular cost towards the whole budget. And the problem with that one was, you mentioned a lot of PDFs. PDFs is where the data goes to die. And I used the Freedom of Information Act in Croatia to ask for a digital version of state budget, and they sent me a PDF with scanned pages from National Gazette, which is of course unusable. And I complained, and I told them that I specifically asked for a digital version of state budget, and they said, well, it's on a CD, therefore it's digital. So. And then I found a guy who works in Ministry of Finance, and I actually paid him 100 euros to export the state budget into an Excel file. So when we launched the site, which was, you know, colorful, you know, very good for television, the journalist asked me, well, where did you get the data? And I said, well, I paid the guy in Ministry of Finance 100 euros to get it. So from that moment on, we have an Excel file on a website of Ministry of Finance. So that problem solved. So.
Okay, that's a totally reasonable price. I mean, I would do that. It's not considered a bribe, right? I mean, it's just for the service. So. What has improved or not improved in the last 2 years? I mean, we're in a relatively young field in Europe, in Southern Europe especially. How have you seen it? You have been in the States, and have you been data shocked with coming back from Texas and seeing that you couldn't get the same files? I guess we all have that experience there. How do you judge, Mara, the last, let's say, 24 months? Are you seeing progress, or is Spain really following through with this open data, open government thing, or is it more talk than real?
Well, yeah, I had when I got back to Spain in January 2011, I was depressed for some months because I passed from living in the US where, okay, it's not the ideal world. I don't know if any of you are Americans. I know there are problems in the US. But when I got back to Spain, the reality was, if, as Elisabetta said, if there is a PDF, it's a miracle. And whenever there's a PDF, even if it's a table, I actually found a PDF with all the fishing subsidies that the Spanish fishing industry was receiving. And this PDF, at the bottom left corner, it had the name of the Excel file of that PDF. I actually emailed the Ministry of Agriculture and said, okay, I know that you have this in Excel, and also I know because there's the name of the Excel file. Can you give me this file that you have there that you have identified in this public document? And the response was, no, we have already produced it in a PDF. So that's all we're obliged to by law. I stumbled across the main word, which was law, regulation. And the situation in Spain is that we don't have a freedom of information law. I know in some countries, like in Italy, it's bad, but at least you have something to grab on and kind of like fight with. And Spain is the only country in Europe with more than 1 million inhabitants without a freedom of information law. This has changed in the past 2 years because now we have a bill in Congress that is being discussed. It's a bill that it's interesting because it's less progressive than the most recent FOI law that has just been enacted in Rwanda. And in Rwanda, they have a more progressive law than in Spain, which is quite shocking, at least for me and for some Spanish citizens, to see how our politicians are not being courageous on the law that they've proposed. But sometime in 2014, the law will be passed, or not passed, will be in effect, and we'll be able to request some data. But what I found from this shameful situation that we have in Spain is that we have to think creatively and use what we have. I sometimes look at projects thinking, not what I wish I would like to do, but, okay, so what's out there that I can use in my benefit, and what projects can I do from what's out there? And I really found that the real treasure trove is the official gazette. Yes, the format is horrible, but there are some things that could be done. For example, it's really interesting. This is the Spanish official gazette. As you can see, sometimes we're lucky and there's an HTML version. Sometimes there's not even text and it's all an image PDF. But in this case, for example, it's official pardons. That it's something that is widely used in Spain, and we've had some big issues in Spain going on because policemen that have been found abusing their power and committing violence against some people have been officially pardoned, or a banker, big banker from Bank Santander, which is the main bank in Spain, has been officially pardoned. This is something that people really connect with, and official pardons are published all the time in the official gazette, and this is the official gazette, and you don't need to understand Spanish. But if you look at this text, and we looked through several official pardons, we would see that there's a pattern. This basically is a text that has this blank. We've given official pardon to blank for this crime blank, and basically what the government does is fill in the blanks with each person that they pardon. So basically, this is a very good text that can be scraped and structured. And with the work of programmers, things like this could happen. This is a website called the, I don't know how to translate it, but it's like the official pardometer or something like that. And basically, this is done by the Thivia Foundation that I talked to you about before. I'm not in part of this project, but I think it's a great project. Basically, programmers scraped all these text, apparently text, converted into data, and they did this search engine of more than 10,000 official pardons since 1996. So you can search by type of crime. You can also search by region. You can see in here I've actually filtered by some revealing secrets. And you can see, you know, some how it's gone through the years. And then you can go to see one by one these pardons. One of the other things we have a problem with in Spain is data protection. So I don't know, again, you don't need to see Spanish, but it doesn't look like you have a name there, right? And this is because in Spain, the data protection agency is very powerful, and it was unclear whether even reusing or recycling this public information from the official gazette and publishing personal information in another application would mean a violation of the Data Protection Act. So they had to basically take out any personal information, and whenever you see at the details, you see that it's a man, you know, female or male, but you don't see the name of the person, although here you get the link to the original source, and you know, you can actually see who it is. So this is one of the examples of projects that could be done. But as I was telling you, I learned about using the opportunities we have, and I also found that we do have a very specific part that we can use, which is the implementation of the Aarhus Convention. I don't know if I didn't know what this was 2 years ago. The Aarhus Convention is a convention that has been transposed into European legislation and therefore to all national legislations in the EU members. And it's basically access to environmental information. And I thought, environment, some people are like, yeah, I don't care about trees. I don't care about, you know, water. It can be very, very powerful. We have a very big problem in Spain, which is wildfires. We launched this project in Thibio last year called Spain in Flames. Just so you get an idea, in the past 10 years, we've had around 170,000 wildfires. Every summer, this is big news in Spain. But journalists only go to the statistics published by the state. Well, those statistics actually mentioned a database of wildfires. So we use the Aarhus Convention to get access to a database of wildfires. So every time I see the word database and I see its environment, my brain goes like, opportunity. So I think that that's something that we need to push for more. And then, you know what? I found that just basically doing some research in certain websites, I found that there were data sets out there. I mean, I was doing some research on how Spanish foreign aid is given, and I found this magnificent data set going back to 1998 of all the money given by all the Spanish institutions as foreign aid. And you know, the good thing is it's in Excel, so it can be downloaded.
Cool.
Thank you, Mara. So you, thank you, thank you also for mentioning the FOIA law. We should say also, we should remember Croatia recently got a new FOIA law, and Italy is struggling for, well, Italy just had a new transparency law in effect last week, and we're fighting for a reform of our access law to make it a decent, a real FOIA law. You lose 3 points for not getting CDs in the mail, so I'm sorry.
Well, on my side, I have to say, I've been working on a project with 260 gigabytes of data, but I didn't get that CD. It's the ICIJNU project, Offshore Leaks, is actually a big leak of 2.5 million files, 260 gigabytes. So, do I earn any more points?
Okay, that makes it even. Elisabetta, you went back to school, and you learned a lot about PDFs last summer.
I learned a lot about PDFs, so if I can have monitor again. Okay, starting from PDF and the official gazette, that's the other keyword, in fact.
Se
okay.
possiamo avere la slide al computer, grazie.
Ok, vediamo se parte. Ok, allora, the idea here was, not the idea, we start trembling, right, a year ago, more or less. I live in Bologna. This is a very seismic country. Bologna had an earthquake last year, and all the area north of Bologna. And I've been working on earthquakes for, like, doing science journalism on earthquakes for the last few years. In fact, I was in Perugia talking about earthquake communication about 2 years ago. And we were discussing L'Aquila at that time, and then last year we had an earthquake in my region. So one of the things that I started thinking was, okay, we're a country where there is a big earthquake almost every year, let's say every 2 or 3 years, a major one. Do we know something about the safety of the buildings that we actually attend every day, and in particular about the schools? And here we always say, you know, the earthquake, the second earthquake last year, 29th of May, struck when I was in school, bringing my child to school. And the thing was that I was thinking, well, we're here in a school, is this school safe, right? So I talked to a seismologist that I was working with for the last few years, and he told me that, you know, in the last 10 years in Italy, there's been few laws and few investments in assessing safety in public buildings, because 10 years ago there was a major earthquake that was at the end of October 2002. Maybe many of you remember that. It was a big one in Molise, and there was a school that collapsed. That was the only building that collapsed in that little village and killed 27 children and 1 teacher. That's the school in San Giuliano di Puglia. So from then on, there were laws and money put in assessing safety of schools. And we start looking for the data, convinced that, of course, someone should have this information about how safe are the Italian schools. So we went to the Ministry of Education. Of course, they are the one who manage a big database of schools. And we found out that, first of all, they have an organized database. They actually published an open database about a year ago. But all they have, it's a list of schools and the addresses of the schools. But they don't know anything about the buildings. Or they say they don't. They say they don't have any information about the safety of buildings. And then so we start looking at the regions, because most schools are actually administered at regional level. So we start going to the regional government, and we found out that there was a system that was organized as such. The money would go from the certain government to the regions, and then the regions would give the money to local authorities to actually do the assessment. And then the assessment were done, and then the assessment were ended in a risk index, like each school was characterized, each building was characterized by a risk index. This risk index was then collected by the National Civil Protection and set in a sort of, let's say, list to then do something to actually improve the safety of the schools. But this risk index, that's what we wanted. That's a particular piece of information. And that particular piece of information is not available. So what we did, we start asking for the data using everything that we could, like mails and phone calls and, okay, the law, which is not really, it's not a Freedom of Information Act properly done. So we start asking for this data and found no collaboration whatsoever at any level, except one person working in the National Civil Protection, who actually gave us all the PDF that were published in the official gazette, just mentioning exactly the money spent to do the assessment. So we ended up merging 2 databases, the database that was published in the Ministry of Education website with all the list of schools. We know there are 42,000 public schools in Italy, more or less, because not even that database is actually accurate. And this is our final database that we had literally to build by hand, comparing the PDF information with the list of the Ministry of Education. The worst part here is that the data in the PDF wasn't at all precise. What we had in the PDF were schools mentioned very often by their common names. And I'm sure many people know that. We have the official names of the school, and then we have the common names of the school. This is the PDF, for example, where we just have the information of the money spent, and let's say school in front of the church, or major school in town. And that was the level of detail, in many cases, of this kind of document. So we had to
And they were spending money on this without basically saying where it was going.
Exactly. So, and the thing was that in the PDF, we'd only have not only the schools, but all the other buildings mixed. So we have literally to go and extract from the PDF each piece of information and fill our database of 42,000 rows, right? So, okay, it was very funny, to say the least, to go and check each one of these on website and make sure that we were talking about the same school, so that that money was actually spent in that school, okay? And the only two regions who actually yield the risk index, so the data we were really looking for, were Abruzzo and Lazio, so only 2 regions out of 20. And so in the end, that database was translated, and we did that with the WIRE team in an interactive map that you see here. And for each school, we basically put a tag. And the tag says the name, the school, the location, in which area it's actually built, because the country is divided into 4 different seismic risk areas. So we have 4 levels of risk, basically. And more or less half of the schools are in high risk areas. So we start kind of looking into which one actually had the risk index. The risk index is here, is stated between 0 and 1. The closest to 0, the highest the risk. And we have loads of schools who are really at risk, a high risk. And anyway, at the end, the map is an interactive map where you can actually go, click on your school and see if it's on the map and which kind of information you have. And the final result is that we know now that 10 years after this big earthquake, we actually killed 27 children. And after all the laws and the money spent, we're talking about 4 billion euros spent from the state, and then a lot of other funding spent at a local level. Most of the schools have not been checked. In fact, only 2,500 schools have been checked, which means less than 10% of the schools who are in high-risk areas, about 5% of total Italian schools. So the data were very bad, very old. We have called it a map of ignorance, because in fact the thing is that the reality is that at the end we don't know anything about seismic safety of our schools, and there is basically everything to do still. So when the map was published, some parents and some teachers actually start going and looking for their schools and writing to us saying, you know, I've gone to the person who's actually the master of the school, asking if they have all the certificates for seismic safety. In one case, in Calabria, which is one of the highest seismic regions, the master said, well, we don't know anything. We are in the hands of God. So that's the state of things. So I have to say that I've learned a lot with this investigation of how to actually deal with PDF and the official gazette, but also what's the real state that, of information that we actually are provided with by our institution.
Okay, you brought back memories from a summer made of PDFs and Excel strings that I don't really like to recall, but no, it's been something, and we have 10 minutes. Okay, so we have a time constraint here. They're kicking us out in 10 minutes. So,
No.
40 minutes. Oh, that was a 4. Okay, we have a data communication here issue, but it's 40 minutes. All right, so that's easier. Mara and Marco, what are the opportunities for developing more data stories, and also what should we do? I would like to open the floor to questions and make it a bit more interactive after this round. So maybe we should throw out suggestions on what we should do in Southern Europe and how we can we get the ball rolling in a wider community, because these are very spot individual projects, and I think we should build a better data journalism community, right?
Should I start or does she start?
Ladies first.
Okay, ladies first.
Always.
Good. What is
That's
okay. Okay, great. So to me, the key word is collaboration. I think coming from a journalistic background, we have where I found that some colleagues have difficulties collaborating with each other, especially from the print backgrounds. And collaboration does not only include collaborating and sharing methods with other journalists, but also with other professions, especially programmers. You know, when I go back to Spain, I didn't find any journalists at first that really liked and knew what an FOI was and that knew what data was. And I found a big support in the programmers community. The programmers in Spain had a lot of interest in open data and opening up data sets. There was even a hackathon called Abre Datos, opening up data, or open data, or anyway, something like that, the translation. And I found that conversations with programmers were more interesting than conversations with my fellow journalists. So after that, I actually learned that we have to foster those exchanges. And of course, worldwide, the Hacks and Hackers communities are very active. In Spain, there was no Hacks and Hackers chapter, and the Hacks and Hackers chapter that we have now is not exactly a way to exchange. It's more like, we're very used to places where we sit and we speak, at least in Spain, conferences, not so many places where we get our hands dirty, right? So I started with a group of people, coordinated some workshops, for example, where we actually say, okay, so today we're going to learn about, okay, how to get data out of PDFs. Today we're going to learn about how to work with numbers. How can we not mess up when we work with numbers and things like that? And we do monthly meetings in Madrid. And we're organizing a big event in May with Karma, who's here in the front row, for basically some seminars and workshops on data journalism. And also we're going to hold a hackathon. After 2 years of actually doing workshops and giving a lot of talks, we thought that it was important to bring the community together and have real example of projects. And the other thing I would say is not only work with other people, other types of professions, but also start simple, start small. It's great to do projects that take you the whole summer going through PDFs. And I spent 8 months looking at all the PDFs on subsidies on fish, and we ended up collecting data for around 6 billion euros in fishing subsidies. And it's great to do big projects, but we can also do small projects. For example, no, it's very simple. So, okay, this is super simple. I know it's not the most perfect map. I know there are many more better things that could be done, but this is something that has been done in a couple of hours. It still amazes me how much data we have from the National Statistics Institute that we don't use. Spain has a big problem of unemployment, okay? Just so you know, so this is unemployment. And I don't know if your eyes get to the percentages, but anyway, the darker it gets, the worse the problem gets, right? So closer to black is unemployment over 40%. And if you see, we have 3 provinces in Spain right now where the unemployment is going, beyond 40%. So just by quick look at this map, you could see how big the problem is, and also the north-south divide that we have in Spain, right? And no newspaper has done this. This is a blogger and a journalist that is very active on Twitter, that has been helping push data journalism in Spain too. And he just got the data from the National Statistics Institute. It got him a while to get the shapefiles for Spanish provinces and all that, but once you do that once, you have it for the rest of your maps. And, in less than an hour, he had this map online, and it went viral. And no newspaper is doing this. So I think that we should think simple too, and have in mind, okay, how much time is going to take me to do this, and is it worth the effort? Because if not, we all get super excited. I want to do all this procurement, and I want to look at this expenditure, and then it could take you forever, and you could get very frustrated.
Okay, so make friends with the developers community is the first strongest recommendation, and the second one is aim big, but also think about the small stuff you can do, because we all like to show off the big projects, but you can do great with the smaller things as well.
And I think it's very important, maybe I didn't highlight, to share.
Sure.
You know? So so it builds up. If you share what you know, like this guy that knows how to do this map, he actually did this is done on Google Fusion tables. He did a workshop. We streamed it online. It's online, and now other people are doing maps like this for other stuff. We need to share. Journalists we cannot keep the knowledge to ourselves. We're not going to grow that way.
Yeah, that's a bit counterintuitive for journalists. But Marco, before hearing you, maybe I would Elisabetta forgot one bit of her previous presentation, but I guess that's the important bit we want to highlight today because it's talking about opportunities. It's datajournalist.it.
Yeah.
So you want to go a minute on that one?
Not that I forgot, it's just that it's actually perfectly
Oh, you were keeping it for the dessert? Okay.
With what Mar was saying. Yeah, we decided to start small and simple, and following advice. I actually want to thank Aaron that's here because he has been telling us that for a long time. Don't complain, start small, and Steve Doig as well last year was saying the same. So many people were saying just start. Just do it. Just do it. So we decided to start, and together with RF, which is the foundation that's been funding the iData project, and my agency, our agency, I mean, I have all my colleagues here, and actually a local radio, which is Radio Città del Capo. I want to mention this because we start doing co-production of things, and that's one key, I think, as well, because we have so little resources. That's very important to start doing things also together and maybe publish them together, so that there is this idea that going over the idea that I own something. Because it's true, once you are in the web, you don't own anything anymore, and it's much more useful to make a collective work and put the resources together and then produce things. So we decided to start with an online magazine, or whatever you want to call it, a new website. It will be actually an official, you know, in Italy there are very complicated laws about registering a website in order to make it official, but that's what it's going to be, and it's called datajournalism.it, and the idea here is to publish only data things. So the first piece actually is, I like to say today because we're talking about Mediterranean, and it's an article and an active map like here. That's been done by two people collaborating with us. They have a blog called Data Ninja, and they have collected all the data published in these last few years over the people dying trying to reach Europe from Northern Africa. And they actually mapped this, built the database together with Gabriele Del Grande, who was actually a blogger that for the last 10 years has been collecting all this data. And so they actually done this big piece of like it's a tool that's already available. It's a heat map, but I've been using a tool to actually say this story and really give us the impression of and the strength of this story of people trying to reach our continent. And then we have lots of small stories, so small projects that actually are maps, as Mar was saying, Google Fusion tables or other type of maps, and simply try to make the story start from the data. So even this one, actually this was totally inspired by the Bay Area Citizen Project, which is mapping the bike accident in a city. And that's really a simple project to do once you get the data. In this case, the data were leaked by a policeman because, in fact, we asked for the data, but the data wasn't, it's not official, but an ex-policeman gave the data. So there is a map in Bologna, the city where I live, and the idea here is to give a very effective, very easy representation of which are the roads which are more dangerous, and I'm sorry it's going to take forever to put it up, but anyway, that are more dangerous, and which are the areas which are actually where there should be something different in terms of mobility. Anyway, this is an opportunity that we want to keep feeding. So we're actually launching it today here because we are going to ask all the people who are interested in doing data articles to contact us and to kind of collaborate with us. And also, we really want to do this co-production sort of model, which in Italy is not that common. So that's one of the.
Is it like a ProPublica model minus $10 million per year?
Exactly.
Okay.
That's exactly the point. Actually, we're starting with a small funding, so it's not like zero resources, but we are looking for more. But the thing is, co-production, sharing, and trying to collect, ideas and products. That's the key we want to use.
And yeah, that seems interesting. Well, I was part of that thinking, so I shouldn't say that straight out, but I think it's interesting because newsrooms and mainstream media have little budget for these projects. I personally struggle a lot at Wired to get those extra a couple €100 for a data project, for a mapping, and for some data work. If you can do co-production and make it easier for media outlets, they'll probably be more receptive and take up pitches on data more easily. So
yeah,
I think
the other thing, if I can just close here, is just strengthening the local level of information, because that's really powerful. Like making the map of accident at a local, like, let's say Bologna in our case, I mean, that's also an important tool just for the local citizens, and they are going to enrich that map because they are interested in making it more and more precise. Like we have already a group of people, the bikers, you know, the people that are like promoting the idea of having bike roads in the city that are actually feeding us with it. So I think that's the key we're going to try.
Thank you, Elisabetta. Marco, on to you. Opportunities, the way ahead. How do we handle this? Don't answer get more CDs in the mail, because that's, you have to turn your mic off.
Okay, if you can just put a website on, which I selected. It's on Chrome.
Go on the Chrome.
Yes. Okay. So couple of remarks on this one. So the first thing I would like to point out is that, you know, when you have some kind of data which you want to show to someone, you have to make a story out of it. I mean, which is a little bit obvious, but people remember in pictures. That's basic psychology. So you remember scenes, like in a theater. So whatever we do, we have to create some kind of narrative behind the data we actually provide. So in this example, which we have on a screen, okay. So we have created a website called State Budget Calculator, which is, you know, state budget is, if you think of a boring document, the state budget is the one. So it has like 14,000 lines with 5-6 figures in each line, so it's completely unreadable. So we created a website which is easy to understand. On the left hand side you have income of the government, which means taxes collected. On the right hand side, expenses of the government, so where the government spend the money. So nobody will remember a phone book or a state budget with 40,000 lines, but they will remember easily divided screen on two sides, and you have to make it exciting. So in this case, we provided these levers, you know, where you could pull left and right, and it will, you can change the figure. How much money are you going to spend on healthcare? Are you going to increase pensions, decrease pensions? Are you going to fire policemen? Are you going to buy more equipment for teachers, and so on? So you can play with it. So you have your own version of state budget and you can play with it. The other thing is you cannot, you are not allowed to make a conclusion. You have to drive anyone to come to the point of conclusion, but they have to make conclusion for themselves. So you have to point them, give them all the directions, but they have to conclude whatever they want to conclude from that, because people don't want to be lectured. So if you just talk to them and say, well, this is so, and there is no discussion about it, they will not remember it as something really interesting. Important part is also that you need to have the data or information which people can relate to. So again, in this example, if we can show it once more, please. Sorry. Yeah. So if you look at these green bubbles, so we have recalculated the whole state budget based on your salary. So if you enter your salary into the top left box, it will calculate how much of your money goes to healthcare, to pensions, to army, to police, teachers, and everything else. And suddenly, we are not talking about billions, we are talking about thousands, something which you can relate to. And that's really important, because if you know that you have spent 2,000 euros a year out of your tax money on a police service, then if you have a problem, then you know that you can expect some kind of service, the same kind of service you will expect in a store, in a hotel, or anywhere else. And the last thing I would mention is that whatever we do, we have to make it look good on TV. Simply because the screenshot of this website, even if we manage to get some TV time, it will show up for a second or two or three. So nobody can make a conclusion or decision made on 2 seconds of screenshot. So you have to make it shiny, because people like shiny things. You have to create high contrast, so it will draw your attention. So it has to be visually interesting, although it might not be pretty in the end. So sometimes you need to create ugly sites in order to draw attention. So that's a couple of lessons I have learned while working with the journalists and the media in the past few years.
How do you get your developers? I mean, I know you're familiar with the technology, but you have some developing work that you don't do yourself. How do you get those guys on board?
Well, I mean, I've been using computers since I was 6 years old, so I'm a little bit lost case in that department, but I can understand code, I can intervene in code, but I'm not really efficient in writing code. So whenever we have something, then I try to figure what kind of knowledge, expertise we actually need. Do we need someone for visualization? Do we need someone for databases? Do we need someone for analytics, statistics, or whatever? And then we try to pinpoint these people in the community. So I mean, of course, during the years I have been part of founding some other organizations like Croatian Web Developers. I've been founding, and I support a lot of people in the startup community, and I try to spend some amount of time on, you know, nurturing my Twitter account, Facebook account, and whatever. So whenever we have some particular need, we either try to find some worldwide example. You know, for example, we know that someone like Open Knowledge Foundation or someone else is doing something similar, and then we try to either use that code or use that code as an example of how to write our own. And then we try to, I go on a Twitter and say, well, I have like 2 weeks of developing for this particular thing. Are there any volunteers who want to work for us, either for free or get paid? And usually we have more than solid number of volunteers coming up.
Okay, so that's sounds pretty efficient as a system. I would like to open up the floor to questions. I'm sure that there are many things you would like to ask our panelists here today. Okay, there's one over there. We have mics, and just raise your hands, and a mic will come close to you. Please, can you say your
I speak in Italian.
Okay. Si presenti così sappiamo.
Bene, grazie. Allora, mi chiamo Francesco, sono un avvocato e mi sono occupato nella mia attività professionale del fenomeno dei conflitti di interesse e anche del fenomeno della gestione dei fondi pubblici ai partiti. Sono l'autore dei Soldi dei partiti, pubblicato con Marsilio, l'ho presentato anche a Bologna lo scorso anno alla libreria Coop di Bologna. Allora, la domanda è questa: esiste, ho seguito con grande interesse le vostre considerazioni, esiste una sorta di database che abbia proprio ad oggetto queste intersezioni, quindi una mappatura, per così dire, dei conflitti di interesse in politica, con speciale riguardo appunto ai fenomeni, per così dire, strategici che poi governano ed orientano la democrazia, fenomeni strategici come appunto la questione centrale della gestione dei fondi pubblici ai partiti, i quali non possono essere, come dire, considerati in modo asettico, autonomo, ma si collegano poi direttamente alla selezione delle classi politiche e quindi alla stessa tenuta democratica, perché spesso tra l'altro appunto i politici selezionati sono appunto quelli che nulla mai obietteranno sulla gestione dei fondi. Ecco, vi chiedo questo, grazie.
Raccogliamo, let's collect another couple of questions and try to answer by batches. Se raccogliamo 2 o 3.
Hello, my name is Lorenzo Brigliasco, I'm editor of U-Trend. My question is, concerns the Mediterranean situation, the Italian one, but also the Mediterranean one. What portion of the difficulties of data journalism in our countries, in your opinion, derives from the difficulty to get data, and what portion derives from the mentality of Mediterranean journalists? Thank you.
Nice question. Let's get another one and then we'll start answering. If there is another one, otherwise we'll start answering. Okay. On the first one, the database of conflicts of interest. Personally, I'm still waiting for the CDs to be in my mail, to show up in my mail. There has been some work done by a group of researchers from, I think, CNR, who was looking at, and this was a couple of years ago, who was looking at people who were sitting on boards of companies, and so you were, well, the picture is, it's kind of a common knowledge in Italy, but I mean, they showed it analytically, and you could see that like a handful of people would be in all the boards, so you had this power network of a couple hundred people who were basically in all the companies. If you build on that, you can do lots, I think. But I don't think, at least in Italy, there is a single database, a place where they do it, unless our secret services have something like that. And, Marco, I think you mentioned that you were looking at doing something about interconnections. Yes. Of power circles, so yeah. Maybe you should.
Okay, so basically, you have in the US you have a couple of similar examples. So I recall, you know, on my political map of San Francisco, you can search it on Google, and it will show you dependency between companies, people, and politicians. And basically, if you talk about a map like this, I would say that what you need to have is a list of all donors to political parties. You will need a list of companies who are donating money to political parties or candidates, members of the board, supervisory boards, owners, and you need to have some kind of history. So what changed in last 10, 15 years? So for example, 10 years ago, you and I, we might have a company together. I was the owner, you might be a general manager. Today I'm a minister in the government. You are still doing some construction work, and suddenly the company gets a huge business. So if you look at only present time, there is no apparent conflict of interest. But if you go back in history, then you will see that there was some common history between us. The second thing is now we have plenty of tools which are available, which have to be finished and perfected. But basically, you can scan. You can decide to scan last 10 years of particular journalist website, like I don't know, Guardian, Le Monde, whatever daily newspaper you might have, and then try to find names of people who appear in the same article. And you can do thousands or tens of thousands of articles per day on that basis. And if these names, which you already have in database of politicians, of public servants, of whatever, if they show up in same or similar context, then you can queue it up for manual inspection and then decide there is some kind of link because you and we showed up on the same football match or on the same concert, and we have been seen or photographed or something. So you can create unbelievable database of formal and informal links between people and companies and institutions, and eventually we might come to a point where it will be quite easy to understand the link between people.
Okay, thank you, Marco. That was really pretty much a blueprint for a nice project there. So everybody who's willing to pick it up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that that's one of those projects you can start and never finish. So I would recommend you, if you start something that it's tangible, maybe you can start by a sector, or for example in Spain we were at some point discussing or how to start with banks, you know, and mapping who's who in banks and were they before, because if not, conflict of I mean, it's very open, and as far as I know in my country there's no database either. In my country we don't know who donates to political parties, so we cannot even start with Marco's recommendations. But the official Gazette is great because it has, at least in Spain, it has all the appointments. It publishes all the appointments of public officials. So it takes a little bit of scraping. It's pretty complex, but the text, again, it's like in official pardons. Sometimes it's pretty much the same. So don't underlook to the official Gazette. Maybe the database is there, it's just not in a database format, at least for public officials. And then, as Marco said, newspapers are a good source. In Spain, newspapers, if you get data from newspapers, it should not breach data protection. So newspapers are a public source of information. And not only the text, photos, and there's been a contest called for global integrity that has just been announced. Amphibio, the foundation that I mentioned, just won some money to develop a tool called Hidden Agenda. That basically what they're going to be looking is they're going to be looking mainly at photos and who's who in the photo, because mainly in Spain we learn about public society, like about the connections of public figures and powerful people because of photos, because they appear in Hello magazine sometimes, you know, Hello magazine, or there's a ABC newspaper, which is a very conservative newspaper, has this part on weddings, and that part is great. The data on who's marrying who, because it tells all high society, and also not only weddings, also death. When people post obituaries, yeah, but not obituaries. There's not obituaries written by journalists, but these obituaries posted by the family. Those are great sources. So not only obituaries, these marrying places, Hello magazine, and things like that, and photos especially that connect people that you would not see, like the King of Spain in a room with other people, and who went to the Euro Cup, you know, with the President of Spain. Those photos are good too.
So gossip and obituaries are data, let's say that. I mean, and that's very juicy data sometimes.
I wanted to mention the Sunlight Foundation that in the US is doing a project like tracking. I don't know if you can see, se mi può mettere il monitor.
Possiamo avere la slide, per favore?
This was presented last year at the Open Data Camp in Warsaw, organized by the Open Knowledge Foundation, and the Sunlight Foundation is actually doing something similar. They're tracking all the funding, the campaign, the lobbying, and they're also producing lots of tools. That's why I'm mentioning it, tools to actually do this kind of job. Of course, again, this is an American example, but they're also producing tools and kind of allowing other people try to follow the same track. And that's one thing. The other thing is I wanted to answer the question on how much is journalism.
We'll get to that one, but maybe
yes.
Marco wanted to add something actually on this, on what you were showing,
I just want to say, I mean, I use Sunlight very much, and they have a number of projects. So some of their projects are high profile and well known, but if you look at their product portfolio, you will see some unbelievable stuff, which is not so obvious, and all of their work is open source, and it can be downloaded and reused. So Sunlight Foundation is excellent repository of good ideas and good tools.
On to the second point from Lorenzo Pregliasco. Is it a cultural or a data issue, what we're facing when we struggle with producing good data stories?
That's a challenge. I think a good portion is actually cultural. I mean, definitely we have a problem in finding the data. Mining the data is a problem in this country, and the lack of culture on transparency, the lack of a proper tool to actually request the data, all of these things are true. But the real problem is that most journalists are not culturally prepared to use the data, and then there are, like, let's say, there is a gap between even the people who want to do it. We saw it in the last year and a half. You really have to study. You really have to study. You have to learn the tools. You have to work in groups. You have to overcome the idea that you're doing things on your own, that you have your little scoop there and you're going to do it on your own. All of this is finished in this kind of journalism. You need to work in groups and you need to really collaborate and share. I totally highlight what Mar was saying before, because if you don't do that, data journalism is going nowhere. So you really have to change attitude. Now, we've been doing lots of training in this year and a half, schools of data journalism and all of that. Okay, one thing is learning the things, and the other thing is changing the attitude, really, and starting doing things with the different group. And there is a lot of people, I mean, there are lots of people who want to really have a part. I've mentioned at the beginning, like the Spaghetti Open Data community. There I found amazing people who are really good with tools, really good with the stats, really good in even in knowing the laws and all of these things. So you have to pull these kind of skills together and give credit for them, of course.
Let's have here Marco and Mar on this one, and I'll be right on to you. It's cultural. I mean, this of course doesn't apply to you, but it's not a cultural difficulty for you. But what about the rest of creation and the media and bloggers? Do you think they're stopped by the lack of data, or is it more that they just not prepared?
Well, it's actually a hard question. I mean, I'm quite unsatisfied with the situation in Croatia simply because so it's 2013 and we don't have a single government published data set. We don't have single government published API. So you simply don't have anything to connect to, even if you wanted to. And with the work we do at Windmill, one of the things we are trying to do is we are trying to motivate and teach other people to start using similar tools. So it would be hard for me to say that there are more examples of similar work, and I'm really unhappy because of it. You know, sometimes you ask yourself, you know, why are we doing this if we are the only ones? You know, the idea is for someone else to pick it up and go working their own ideas and their own projects, but it will eventually come. You know, things are changing. Sometimes it takes time, but we'll get there.
Just keep doing it. Quick answer from Mar, and then we have more questions coming there.
I totally think it's a cultural thing, and I think that's one of my missions as journalist now. I've turned a little bit into an advocate, into a transparency advocate, and also into a data journalism advocate. And I spend a lot of time going to talks that don't pay, teaching people. I lose money sometimes doing this, and I do it because I believe that we're planting seeds, you know, that will grow. And I've seen them grow in these past 2 years in Spain since I'm back. However, I've lost hope in the media, in the mainstream media. You know, when I go back to Spain, I started thinking, okay, I need to talk to El País. El País needs to be doing this. El País is Spain's main newspaper, in El Mundo. And I see that they are very difficult structures, static. very difficult to change. Having said that, I've trained with some others to a small group of journalists in El País newsroom, and this is a big change, the fact that they're doing training on data journalism, and they're going to be doing more. But it's very hard for them to basically change their structures. So I actually, in these 2 years, I shifted my speech into the fact that I think that the revolution will come from outside. And I think that I see projects being done outside the media that are more interesting than what I see inside the media. And I also think that part of that advocacy that I do taps into public officials. I've gone to the Spanish Senate. I talk to politicians all the time. I try to convince them of like no to PDF, which sounds like super simple to us, but it's kind of like scandalous to them. They always say, oh, but we publish in PDF because we don't want you to alter the data. And it's like, okay, well, that's exactly what I want to do, you know? And you know, here is how I can do it, even if you don't help me. So I think that we need to change culture in both sides, journalists and public officials, so they don't see this as a threat. They also see transparency as a good way of connecting to people. And one last thing I wanted to say on these tools, I love all these tools, and I think it's great to make use of tools that already exist, that are open source software. Not only the Sunlight Foundation, My Society in the UK has a lot of open source tools. The Open Knowledge Foundation, the Open Spending tool is really good. But you need to build a community around those tools. If you don't tap into the community and spend a lot of time sharing with people that's there, also tapping into something that connects to them, that's going to be dead. And people are going to go to this tool. You're going to go into the media, everybody's going to like it, and then you get like 50,000 views one day, 30,000 second day, and then the rest you get 10 views. And do you really want to spend so much time for 10 views per day? You know, we need to think more when we develop these long-term things into community, and how are we going to promote this in the long term?
Okay, this time it's real. We got the last 3 minutes. So if you want to, we have one question there, and if we have any more, raise your hands, and then we'll try to do a turbo answer. Go ahead.
Good morning. Thanks for being here to everybody. I'm Carlo Marsili from School of Journalism, Walter Tobagi, Milan, and I'd like to ask to all of you, what are the legal tools, hopefully saving the 100 euros Mark spent for it, to push on the institutions and administration and so on to release the data they have. Thanks.
And there's one question over there. C'è una domanda là in fondo, se possiamo prendere anche quella e proviamo a fare una risposta velocissima.
Yes, thank you. I would like to ask Marco Racar if he could give just a few quick links for some other examples that he can think of good examples of data journalism in either former Yugoslavia or the Balkans in general. Thank you.
Okay. First question from Milan, legal tools. I guess that's one for me because I've been talking about that all day yesterday. There are some legal tools. There's not a FOIA law in Italy, but there's a transparency decree in force, and there's an access law. And Italy signed the Aarhus Convention. Mar was mentioning earlier. That's actually better than the access law we have, the 241 from 1990, which personally I hate, and I think we need to change. Aarhus Convention is basically an environmental FOIA. It's much wider, and as Mar was saying, it's really powerful because when you ask data about environment, which connects to health, think Ilva in Taranto and all that stuff, you can use Aarhus Convention. The problem here in Italy is that there's very little work done with the Aarhus Convention, so the public officials don't know what it is. So explaining it to them is a very lengthy process. The access law, the 241, if you weren't at the panel yesterday where Lorenzo Totaro was talking, and he told the story about how they went to court with Bloomberg on the SWAT contracts from the city of Cassino, you should read that story or look it on the filming on the IGF website, but that's definitely, I mean, it took them 2 years, it took Bloomberg 2 years to get to the derivatives contracts from the city of Cassino. So that is like worst case scenario. But you can do access to information. I gotta do this, I'm sorry. I have to quote my own project, but there's a project called Diritto di Sapere. Dirittodisapere.it is the website. There's a manual on how to use access law in Italy. It's downloaded, it's in Creative Commons, use it. I mean, it's free to use and share and everything. 1 minute.
I want to reply to that.
15 seconds because Marco has to reply to the last question from the lady.
Right, I just want to say that something that we found, or I found very useful in Spain is to know what other laws oblige to publishing. For example, the law of subsidies in Spain says that public subsidies with certain limitations need to be public. So whenever you're asking, you can actually hold on to that law, or even the law on public procurement that mentions that too. And politicians, at least in my country, they react to rankings, to comparisons of like, Madrid is the worst and Catalonia is the best, and then they go like, oh, you know, and so things that actually try to compare regions, like Transparency International does this index, which it's, in my opinion, in Spain, it's not very practical, but the practical thing is that it makes town halls really want to change, so they have more stars the next year, you know? So in order to change politicians' minds, we need to think on those ways sometimes, you know, and try to convince them, also see it with them and convince them this is going to be a political win-win situation for you, you know? Sometimes that works better with politicians than just using laws.
Okay, so I cannot give you links right now, but our next project, which will start in like a couple of weeks, is we are going to find and celebrate and pinpoint all the successful or less successful examples of open data and whatever is related to these issues on the website of Windmill. So, and the project is designed to be regional, to be written in Croatian language, which is understood in the region. So hopefully within a couple of months we will create a body of knowledge about the good practices and everything else which could be useful for Croatian and regional journalists. So stay tuned.
Okay, great. Well, thanks to all of you. I need to wrap this up, and I'll do it with 3 bullet points. I think the suggestions coming from this panel are community building, make friends outside the newsroom, get your developer friends to work with you, learn. There's a world out there, and it can be very interesting. The other thing is think creative, look around, copy stuff and adapt it. I mean, it's a very DataWorks is a very vibrant community. It's not only journalists doing this stuff, so ideas can come from anywhere. And the third, last but not least, is become a data advocate. I mean, we really need that. Ask for data, ask for access to information, and bring other people to do that. But we're not done with data here at the IGF. There's a hackathon. When is that?
It's tomorrow morning. We're starting at 9:30.
It starts tomorrow morning. It's a whole day.
All day hackathon in La Rosetta. And Andrea is there. Is one of the people
Andrea Nelson Mauro is over there.
And there is also a registration form on the site, but anyway, I'm sure like if people want to take part.
Just show up at La Rosetta if you haven't registered, and you'll find some way of getting your hands dirty. So I wish to thank all of you, and thanks to AEGC and Open Knowledge Foundation for hosting us here. I hope to see you around at the festival. Bye. Thank you.
Yes, I had a brief time, but I'm not going to be able to write about it. But I know the things that I asked. I asked Johannes to. I told Johannes I would share with my colleagues that might write something about it. So I still have to tell them about it.
I think this idea was that we could collaborate a workshop. That's like 60-minute workshop. And what we're going to do is, from our side, just show them the data developers and then what I'm pitching if you're out in the workshop is, ideas from journalists how to use the tool, how to develop, use the pieces, the software.
So are you going to be here today?
Yes.
Why don't we grab a drink later?
Yeah.
We can talk a bit.